Welcome to the CLS Monthly Market Review. I'm Rusty Vanneman, President and Chief Investment Officer at CLS Investments. And with me this month is Kosha Edis, Senior Portfolio Manager. Welcome, Kosha.
Great to be here.
We have a lot to talk about, a lot of interesting things, even in the last few days. But first of all, let's review market performance over the last month. What stood out to you?
Well, there has been a little bit of recent weakness, but I think the most important thing is that markets are still strong. I think there's a lot of volatility, a lot of noise out there, but if you look at the big picture, we've been in a positive market.
Yep. You're right. It was another good month and otherwise a good year, and our expectations are for more good returns moving forward.
Absolutely.
That said, at the end of the month and the beginning of the new month, we've had some price weakness and a couple different events. One has been the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve did cut rates. I think that they cut it by 0.25%. And I think the expectation, probably in hindsight, given how the markets reacted, is they expected more. So stocks have sold off, interest rates have dropped.
More.
I know, they always want more. What do you take of the Federal Reserve cutting rates?
I think, it was, I'm not sure if it was, exactly necessary, but it's what the market wanted.
It's like their hand was basically played by the market.
Yes, they almost had to do it. And, when the Fed cuts rates, it should, all else considered, have a little boost to economic growth. So if anything, the expectation of this should have been more favorable, I would think.
We could talk through what the Federal Reserve was trying to do. I guess we should take them literally. That said, you have to think that something that had to be in the back of the mind of the Federal Reserve is that yields around the world are so low.
Yeah.
In the United States, yields are higher. And all else being equal, that creates a stronger U.S. dollar. And that's not something the president wants. And all else being equal, it's kind of a headwind for the economy. So just lowering rates could bring the dollar down a little bit.
There was a little bit of discussion about the tariffs also. That played into the decision.
I was just going to segue into that. You beat me to it. Nicely done. So the tariffs, obviously you're an international expert here at CLS Investments. What's your take on it?
Well, we've talked about this a lot of times in the past. Tariffs aren't good for anybody, but the tariffs we are discussing, they impact a smaller portion of the global economy. But what it does impact is the way people think about their operations, their businesses. So business leaders may not make those capital investments that they were planning. They might not produce as much in anticipation of the worst. What that leads to is a bit of economic slowdown. And we've been seeing this. There have been several metrics that have shown the economy around the world, economies are starting to slow, and that has led to a little increase in the probabilities of a potential recession.
I agree.
When the probabilities of such things increase, it's important to reevaluate your portfolio holdings and perhaps add a little bit of resiliency.
There you go. You're the master of segues for this video. There's so many things you said there that we could unpack a little bit, but let's actually go with the resiliency, because this week we did have our CLS Investment Committee meeting, quarterly meeting, and the CLS Investment Forum, where we do bring in outside speakers to speak about our themes. One of our themes was Be Resilient. And in that particular case, the idea behind the theme is that we're late cycle for the economic cycle itself. Market valuations are rich, maybe overstretched a little bit. So how should we build portfolios? And the idea is that we need to build resiliency by favoring non-cyclical sectors and then also being creative in how we diversify portfolios. That said, probably the more interesting theme was from our other speaker, and that was the Be Innovative theme. Talk about that a little bit.
This is really an interesting theme. Ken Cho came out. They're a leader in innovation, and they discussed the different types of things that are happening all around us. They've already happening. It's not something that's going to happen, but it's all about technological evolution. But it's not specific to just the technology sector. It's happening in every sector. It's the way that people do their jobs, whether it be on manufacturing floors or in the office. It's about how we interact with the world in terms of autonomous vehicles or connectivity, virtual reality. These things, which are shaping the world, are having a significant impact on companies.
Yeah.
And the companies that are adopting these technologies should benefit in the future. So we're not talking about, FANG stocks or the high flyers. There's opportunities there where you get significant growth potential, but reasonable valuations. And those are the opportunities we'd like to participate in.
To kind of summarize that point, it's some of these be innovative themes and ideas are super exciting as consumers, but also for investors as well. And to touch on that point, I think the initial thought is you're right. These are glamour stocks. These are high growth stocks. And just really expensive, but actually valuations you said were reasonable. But actually, in the example that we saw in the collection of securities, it was actually a slight discount to the overall market with growth rates that are up to double what the market was. So that's pretty exciting for us. So to just kind of summarize, the be resilient, we kind of see storm clouds on the horizon. They're a little bit closer than they were. Doesn't mean we're going to have a storm, but we're watching it pretty closely. There's various signals we're looking at. But even if we get that storm, behind that, there's sunny days ahead. How about that?
Well said.
All right,
well
great.
Said.
Well, Kosha, thanks a lot. And thank you for your time and trust in CLS Investments, and we'll see you next month.